But for right now, Imran looks ready to go to me. So I know Imran works at GDS, working on community, running the community for the design system. I'll hand over to him. I'm excited to hear about this talk about running and getting the momentum from communities. Huge round of applause once again. Imran Hussain.
Everyone hear me okay? Yeah. So, hey up Leeds. This is the first time I've been to this event, so very, very excited to be talking and kind of listening to the other talks as well. Fully leaning into the cheesy title here with the Spider-Man kind of theme. With great community comes great responsibility. Obviously, it comes from the more popular phrase, with great power comes great responsibility, which is popularised in mainstream culture by Spider-Man. But you may or may not know, it wasn't just Uncle Ben. It was a French philosopher called Voltaire who also came up with this before the time of the French Revolution. And it was all about aristocracy in France kind of taking advantage of their power and really pushing the working classes and the masses down and taking advantage of that. There was a brief introduction at the start, but I'm Imran. I work at GDS, Government Digital Service. I'm a community designer on the gov.uk design system. So a lot of what I do, I made up my role. So if you haven't heard of that, that's absolutely fine. I kind of created it. But basically, my main job is to manage the interactions between the gov.uk design system and its open source community. And because people contribute towards it and it's open source and we want to invite people in, we spend a lot of time kind of nurturing and building that community and thinking about how we kind of build it. And, you know, the talk today is kind of reflective of some of the things I've picked up from 5 years of running this community and several other communities that I've kind of run over the years as well. So first up, kind of, what do we mean by community? Because a lot of people use that word in different contexts. It has nice connotations. I don't like gatekeeping it, but quite often people use it in contexts where it doesn't really feel like a kind of community at all. But it can mean different things. I think community could be any sort of club, society, council, group that you kind of put together. Anything where there's a set of relationships to maintain. So it could be your team. Your team could have a community kind of aspect to it. But it can be different things to different people. It might be a group of people kind of living in the same place. Most of the time, the term community kind of describes the commonalities between people. So it's usually based on things like values, a joint identity that people are trying to kind of put together. It creates a sense of belonging to a group, and that can make communities really, really powerful. And it can mean they can be exploited as well. Individuals strengthen a community, and communities can, in turn, when used correctly, amplify the voice of those particular individuals. There's a really nice quote from the 80s from Anthony Cohen saying, people construct community symbolically, making it a resource and repository of meaning and a referent of their identity. So it can really touch people and get to the core of you attaching yourself to like-minded people, finding your tribe, finding the people that are kindred spirits to yourself. And like I said, you can find that in many, many places. It could be a club that you've joined. It could be people you play football with or netball with. It can be a board. It can be a council. It really just depends on how that group is set up and how it is run, whether it feels like a community or not. We're quite lucky that in Leeds we have quite a lot of these kind of communities, and a lot of them are in this digital field. This is from years ago, but it's carried right through into kind of today, where Hey All Day is part of the Leeds Digital Minifest. And like I said, we're very, very lucky. We've got a nice digital contingent in Leeds, and there's lots of events to kind of get involved in. I tend to think communities are a type of service in themselves. So talking to people who quite often work in UX and design services and design products, communities, they're kind of geared towards people and making them better, making them smarter, making them stronger as part of a collective kind of unit. And I think they're services in that they help people. So communities can provide support, they can provide skills, they can provide advice to people who may be in difficult situations, they may be in need of help. And, you know, these are communities that kind of provide a service. Communities can also aid learning and skills development as well. So one of the most important aspects of communities, I think, is the kind of skills and knowledge you will gain from being around other knowledgeable people. And some communities are set up to do that, such as communities of practice and communities of interest. Communities can also help you become an active member of society. So, you know, whether it's engaging with topics like politics, the environment, or just even watching films together, communities can keep you engaged with our society, and they can keep you engaged with our current culture. And that might be an interest community or a community of action. Overall, I think communities build relationships. They tie people together, you know, whether it's new friendships, mentoring, or even just lending a kind ear. They knit people together in ways that they weren't before. In short, I think communities are services too. So, we've talked about kind of what communities are and how different things can be considered communities, but are ethics important in this kind of structure? So I think they are. And, you know, when certain companies tread the line with ethics, it can make or break a company. So I'm going to share an image. At first, I'm not going to explain much, but I feel like most people will get my point. So I'm just going to wait a few seconds to kind of gauge your response to see, are ethics important for a company? So, yeah, you kind of get the point, right? So this is, in case you haven't been living under a rock, or you haven't religiously avoided news cycles or doom scrolling, you'll know this is Elon Musk, and he's the CEO of Tesla and X. And a lot of the things he's been doing have been unethical, and I can very much tell you that Tesla and X's stocks have not gone that way. They've very much gone that way, the opposite way. And that's a lot of that is due down to his ethics, how he's acting, and the perception of the company as a result. You know, the head of the company is acting a certain way, and it's affected how people respond to the company that is underneath him. And, you know, it might be in different contexts. It might be in a kind of workplace. And not all examples will be as obvious as Amazon's kind of exploitation of its warehouse workers, where they do loads of overtime and, you know, they kind of engage in union busting so they don't get rights and things like that. There might be other workplace structures that you're involved in that masquerade as communities. I mean, how many meetups have you been to where the direction's coming from on top and you have no say in what you're kind of taking part in? It's just top down, taking advantage of your kind of time, and it's masquerading as a community kind of structure. And I can't count actually the amount of time I've seen communities of practice, especially within workplaces, and they're being utilized to deliver free like design ops, DevOps, or research ops, rather than hiring in a manager. They just utilize the time and expertise of people there, masquerade it as a community, but really it's one-way traffic. It's all for the organization, and the people who are involved in that community are not getting very much out of it at all. Now, it doesn't just apply to workplaces. It can happen in social spaces as well. So Facebook and data. You might know some of these things, but Facebook has 2.1 billion active daily users. Every single day, it gathers over 500 terabytes of data. And unfortunately, it's known that Facebook likes to sell a load of that. So it sells a load of user profiles and sells a lot of kind of insights to different companies. And, you know, investigations have proved that Facebook data has been used to spread misinformation, and it's been used to affect political elections, including in this kind of country. So, you know, these are some examples from tech giants, but these same ethical considerations still apply to smaller companies. And in fact, I would say in smaller organizations, the people who are in that community, the guard's probably a little bit lower because they're not expecting you to take advantage as much. They're expecting you to be more ethical. So, which ethical guidelines should apply to communities, and how do they differ from design or development kind of ethics? Quite lucky we don't have time to get into the theological models of ethics too much today, because this is the lightning version of this talk. But I'll just highlight a few of them. So there's these are the kind of most popular schools of ethics. There's consequentialism, also known as utilitarianism, which is all about the outcome. So whatever you do, whatever action you take, the outcome should be positive for the user or the person that you're taking that action upon. There's deontology, which is the only thing that is good is goodwill. And, you know, you need to act on social duty and make sure everything is done with goodwill. And the last one is virtue ethics, and this was popularized by Aristotle, so it comes from a long, long, long lineage. And it's all about virtues, and virtues, according to him, are character traits that allow us to act by reason, and acting by reason will lead to a good life for the individual and collectively as a society as well. So which ethical guidelines apply to kind of UX, and which one of those can we kind of bring into our communities? So first of all, avoid deceptive patterns. So deceptive patterns often seen in UX services. They trick the user into doing what they want unethically via various means. It might be language, it might be visual cues, it might be emotional manipulation to try to stop you to do something. And you'll quite often see the same happening in communities as well. Many brands see communities as a marketing funnel. You know, we'll get people in the door, we'll get them interested, and then we'll sell something to them. So this might take the form of a paywall for something, for certain community events or platform features, or even a trial period for being on a Slack group or something like that. And there needs to be a balance here. Whilst good work deserves to be compensated, so do users and community members. A community can't just be a time sink. You need to make sure you provide something valuable for community members as well. And what will help further is our next ethical guideline, which is transparency. So in UX research, this might be something like informed consent. Things like this are vital in communities where people's time and effort is often given up on a voluntary basis, and they're not paid for anything that they kind of do. So one of the key questions is, how long will a community last? Will it disappear after you've got the use of your kind of community members or the kind of users? And unfortunately, both in the private sector and in the public sector, I've seen that way too often. Your community doesn't have to last forever, but you should be really open about how long you're going to support it and invest time into running nice events and organizing it and things like that. Should also be open about the goals and what you hope to get out of the structure. And I would say that's the community equivalent of informed consent. Another one is power relations. How does the power flow within your community? Who's in control can make a huge difference to how you experience a community structure. As I mentioned before, in workplace communities, does a profession lead or a senior manager control everything that kind of happens in that community space? Does your organization just extract information from you without giving anything back? That is, exploitation essentially of a community structure. What I've also seen is community leads or someone just using it as a personal soapbox to kind of further their own personal profile or just spread their kind of ideas and virtues, which aren't always that virtuous. So what I would say is, in a community, is there any autonomy? Is there distributed decision making? And can you get people involved in making decisions? I think giving people more of a say in a community is a surefire way to increase buy-in and a sense of ownership. And in both UX and in communities, it pays to co-design with your audience. So try and do that whenever you can. And finally, I would say the last major thing is accountability. So who holds community leads or your managers in UX to account? Is there some sort of way to have recourse if someone does something wrong? Is there a code of conduct in your community? If you have a complaints process, how can you make sure you handle it ethically? Is it the same people who have committed the act or stepped across ethical boundaries also doing the investigation? So in that case, are they marking their own homework? Which means there will be no kind of recourse. Quite often they'll just say, sweep it under the rug and it'll kind of go away. So think about what values a community operates under and who decides these. Can the community members get involved in collectively deciding those values and helping the community operate ethically? So just in summary, some kind of key takeaways. Set out to provide value for your community, not just for yourself or your organization. Try to be transparent about your goals and how you plan to work with the community to achieve them. Don't exploit your position as an organizer of the community. Try to transfer power and decision making if you can. And finally, there should be some way to hold leads accountable and some code of conduct if you can possibly do it. And that's me. Thank you very much.